In less than 30 years from now, most of us won't be able to have our own cars, and many of the major car manufacturers that we know and love today will have disappeared. Yes, the personal car is about to go extinct. Don't believe me? Keep watching and I'll explain exactly why.
Brown car guy.
Are electric cars the future? First, let's tackle electric cars. If you haven't plugged in yet, if you're still resisting the resistors, if you remain insulated from the electric revolution, let me bring you up to charge. The latest electric cars are excellent and they're getting better and better. By this time next year, the pictures that we'll be posting of the new cars that we're lusting after will be more of EVs than petrol-powered machines. I've reviewed more electric cars in the last 3 years than I have in the 30 years prior to that. That's out of my 33-year career as a motoring journalist. One thing is clear to me. The pace of development and evolution in EVs is staggering. Ranges are extending, charging times are dropping along with prices, and they are always shockingly quick to drive. You can no longer afford to be completely dismissive of electric cars. You can't ignore them now or stubbornly insist that we need to stick only to petrol and diesel, i.e. ICE, internal combustion engine cars. Not least because it's expected that we'll completely drain all our current reserves of fossil fuels by around 2070, by which time finding, drilling or fracking for new reserves of oil will become prohibitively expensive and environmentally unsound. So that's it then? Electric cars are the future, right? And for sure, I will be doing a ton of electric car content in 2023, more than ever in fact. There's no doubt about that. When batteries run out. There's a but though, a very big but. We are presently relying almost entirely on lithium batteries to store power for our EVs. These battery packs typically last between 100,000 to 300,000 miles or 15 to 20 years. Now, to replace a battery pack in a car can cost from $20,000 to well over $30,000. Just as fossil fuel is running out, we also then have to ask the question of, do we have enough lithium and where is it coming from? Lithium is a powdery substance that is mined from the earth. Keep in mind that lithium-ion batteries are employed not just for EVs, but other uses as well. For example, 90% of grid energy storage across the globe uses them. The good news is, we're okay for lithium. For now, that is. But as early as 2030, we will start to feel the pinch. Incidentally, that's the same year that some countries like the UK are stipulating that only EVs can be sold new. It's a very short-sighted and premature decision in my view. The exponential growth in demand for batteries will overwhelm the current mines by that time. Most lithium comes from countries like Australia, which produces half of all lithium currently. Bolivia, China, Argentina, the so-called lithium triangle, actually have the largest reserves. But there's also untapped potential in places like Afghanistan and Africa. However, we're just 7 years away from 2030, and it can take over 6 years for new mines to be set up and to start running. And there's other problems such as geopolitical. I mean, you can see how that might impact access to reserves in Afghanistan, for example. Plus, of course, there's the environmental issues. Mining can contaminate soil and groundwater, and talking of water, you need vast amounts of it for the lithium mining process. So that's a bit of a problem for countries that are already dry and arid. There's also the environmental impact of moving all this lithium around. For example, ore from Australia is shipped to China to refine into lithium hydroxide or cathodes, which are then shipped to countries that actually make the batteries that go into EVs. Hence why electric cars have such huge carbon footprints before they are even delivered to their first owner, typically over 25 tons. There is currently a lot of effort going into new sourcing, mining and refining technologies to drastically reduce this impact. They will be effective, but don't expect that tonnage to come down drastically too soon. There simply won't be enough cars for everyone. All of this means that the current shortage of new cars that was initially brought on by a semiconductor computer chip shortage post-pandemic and then compounded by the war in Ukraine impacting additional raw materials such as aluminium will continue into the 2030s as there just won't be enough batteries to go around for EVs. That's okay, you're thinking. By that time, there'll be plenty of used EVs on the market. Well, yes, but can I refer you back to what I mentioned earlier about the life cycle and cost of replacement of batteries? Now, the average used car price in the UK is now £17,500, which is rather high, but prices of second-hand cars have also leapt up in line with rising new car prices and supply shortages. Having spent nearly 20k on a car, how many used car buyers will then be able to further stomach another 20 to 30k bill for new batteries? None, I think. Usually when the components needed to keep an average used car going costs more than the purchase price of that car, the car is scrap. Petrol or diesel used cars, on the other hand, can be run until their engines implode or the bodies rust away. That could be decades. I'm currently driving a 33-year-old BMW E30, which is perfectly serviceable and is likely to remain so for years. Based on the information currently to hand, most electric cars will have a lifespan of about 20 years, and at that age they'll probably take days to charge to their maximum degraded capacity of around 40%, say, after which you'll be able to drive them around the block before having to push them back to the nearest charger. Also by that time there'll be better, more efficient and highly desirable newer cars that will make your EV look obsolete. But the newer cars will be more expensive, much more expensive. Reversal of the democratization of personal transport. You see where this is all going, right? In the EV-only future that we're currently envisaging, just the lucky few with funds and fortunes will be able to afford cars. The rest of us will inevitably be relegated to using underfunded and overcrowded and woefully inadequate public transport, or bicycles. Be warned, and in no doubt, we are already on the path to reversing the democratization of personal transport originally afforded to us by the advent of widely available cars at the turn of the previous century. Legacy car manufacturers will disappear. It's not just bad news for motorists and consumers either. For those that still mourn the loss of car companies like Saab and Rover, you'd better stock up on boxes of hankies, as a lot more of the traditional car companies will find themselves short-circuited by the EV revolution. You see, first they were a bit slow on the uptake, until brands like Tesla made electric cars desirable and sexy. Tesla, however, also paved the way for many new startups getting in to the car-making business. The very nature of an EV facilitates many more boutique companies to enter the fray. You see, an EV in its core components is completely different to an ICE car, and to a large extent far less complex. All you really need is a highly configurable modular or skateboard platform, as they are known. This is basically a flat frame with the batteries contained within it and space for the motors at the wheels, whether on the front or rear axles or within each of the wheels themselves. And that's it. Then you just plonk the rest of the car on top. There are already startups that are focusing on just making and supplying these skateboards. Other startups can just build a body and voila, you have a new car, which could theoretically be customized to your exact design and custom specifications. And since EVs will already have become costly commodities reserved for the fortunate few, extreme personalization will be in more demand than ever, I think. Think of it as fine tailoring, but for cars. The sheer size, scale and complexities of large-scale car companies mean they just can't pivot so easily into this new paradigm. In terms that my media contemporaries would relate to, it's like traditional print publishing houses being too big and cumbersome to contend with the internet revolution, and which is now completely decimated and crippled by new media giants like Google and Meta. It's not over till the fat motor revs. Okay, look, it's not quite all over just yet for us common motorists. The development of electric cars and batteries has to continue, especially battery technology. Ideally, we want to see lighter, longer lasting energy storage solutions, and also cheaper. Meanwhile, we should stop scrapping old cars. That's just wastage and not exactly great for the environment either, especially as many older cars are not entirely recyclable. Keep the following in mind. The carbon footprint of a new car is from 6.5 tons to anywhere over the aforementioned 25 tons, whereas running an existing car produces just 4.5 tons annually and barely over half a ton for a classic car. But how are we going to fuel them? Because I've already stated that oil will run out by the 2070s. Well, biofuels, e-fuels and synthetic fuels are a thing, people. Essentially, we can grow fuel. But the argument there is that you need to balance that against growing food crops. After all, do you want to drive or survive starvation, that is? However, it is possible to create fuel by extracting the carbon back out of the atmosphere. This is already happening and could be a big part of the future of sustainable transport. Porsche is doing a lot of work in the area of e-fuels currently. Also, keep in mind that old school petrol and diesel engines can be modified to run on new school hydrogen. While there are big transport, storage and delivery issues with hydrogen as a fuel, it still needs to be considered seriously, especially for commercial vehicles. And hydrogen fuel technology is a viable option, as Toyota and Honda have both proved. While I am now certainly a fan of EVs, unlike some so-called evangelists, that's not to the exception or exclusion of everything else. I believe that we must have a holistic and all-encompassing approach to our transport solutions rather than lumping all our hopes in one basket. So there's two prospective futures facing us right now. One, where only the rich can own and drive cars and the rest of us get crammed onto buses and trains, or we could bring back horse-drawn carriages. The second involves a time when EVs share road space with decades-old diesel and petrol cars, hydrogen-powered machines, and more. Perhaps even cars with atomic batteries and nuclear fission, or a Mr. Fusion home energy reactor. Now, that's not an attempt to end this discourse with flippant fancy, but to stir and inspire real and genuine innovation in the fields of energy creation, power storage, and road transport. Otherwise, option one will be upon us soon, and you and I definitely don't want that.
Brown car guy.
Hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please hit the like button and share this video as well if you can. And while you're at it, check out these guys who also sponsor my content. I am deeply grateful to them because it helps me to buy new equipment, put fuel in the cars, and yes, buy a cup of coffee. You can do the same. Just go here or right here on YouTube. Just hit these three little dots down here and click on thanks. Make sure you're signed in first. My content is free, but this is how you can help me keep it that way. I may even send you a gift. Oh, by the way, watch this next.